human journey towards 2000. Brought to you by Volkswagen.
1/3 of Canadians use computers on the job, but top managers make up less than half of computer users. That may be why business productivity has not increased at the same rate as computer sales. A typical scene, an executive on the telephone, computer keyboards busy outside the office.
Wake up. Dear Mr.
Dan Thompson is dictating a letter to a voice recognition computer called Dragon Dictate.
I am pleased.
He is a quadriplegic and can't use a keyboard. Others simply won't.
People with a physical disability who cannot type can now access personal computers through speech input with the latest speech recognition software called Dragon Dictate. This is the first commercial general-purpose voice-driven typewriter. Dragon Dictate interactively learns a user's vocabulary, which means people with impaired speech can use the product if their words are consistently pronounced. Users of the product typically report an average typing speed of between 25 and 40 words per minute. For some people, shooting their own home videos just isn't enough.
Disabled people is often the way they are perceived. Quadriplegic Dan Thompson, however, has turned the results of a tragic accident 11 years ago into a special sensitivity for the needs of other physically challenged people. CFTO's Brad Giffen has the story in tonight's Heartbeat.
Good afternoon, and welcome to a demonstration of a voice recognition unit.
When you meet Dan Thompson, it's his ability you see before the disability.
I guess my personality is such that I've always liked to be in the forefront of everything I've ever touched. I like to use the term the Midas touch.
Thompson is the Canadian representative of a product called Dragon Dictate, a $24,000 voice-driven word processor that's helping scores of disabled people. Thompson himself was left a quadriplegic 11 years ago as the result of a car accident.
The hardest part, I think, is curbing attitudes.
His young plans of becoming a professional football player have been replaced with medals, honoring him as a wheelchair rugby coach. Pictures of the family that helped him. Now, at 27, having graduated from university, Thompson also operates a small investment company and is an advisor with the provincial government for other physically challenged people.
I think if you can give of yourself, you will always reap the benefits because you will see the reaction of the people that you're touching in everyday life.
Brad Giffen, CFTO News.
Experiences of 4 Ontario government employees. Their job descriptions are as varied as their disabilities.
The Ontario Public Service as a disabilities initiative job broker. So it's my mandate, I guess, to take disabled individuals and try to gain employment within the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Community and Social Services. The condition involved in an automobile accident. I rendered myself a quadriplegic due to severing my spinal column at the C5, C6 level. And essentially I've sort of gone on with my life and moved on to bigger and better things. So.
I'm not wearing my... All 4 people is the lack of orientation material for disabled employees.
No, and as a matter of fact...
Rely on the assistance of other people, and depending on the situation, it can become quite awkward, depending on who you're asking. If they're receptive to help you, then it's no big deal, but obviously if the person has an attitude problem or perhaps maybe a little uncomfortable with your disability, it could create some adversarial situations.
In the workplace are done for the mobility impaired. Dan and Lena are both mobility impaired and have similar problems.
Due to the nature of my disability, I require attendant care, so I hire my own attendants. Primarily they get me up and dressed, showered, ready to go. I have my own vehicle as well, which is equipped with a wheelchair elevator on it. It also has hand controls, so at some point in time I could drive myself, but I've opted for the fact of having my attendants drive me. I'm only within a 5-10 minute drive, and what I try to do is get my attendants to take me to work, drop myself and the vehicle off at the corner of Bay and Grosvenor, which is right at 880 Bay. From there, they will close up the vehicle, assist me into the building, and depending on if I have any meetings that day or not, I'll see them that evening or perhaps the next morning. So.
By Wheel-Trans, I have...
The actual cash machines are almost impossible to access. In fact, I can't access them, and of course I wouldn't feel comfortable in divulging my PIN number or personal identification number to the clerks there. I have done that in the past, but thought better of it. And and even to do any kind of money exchanges at the counter. The counters are very high and it's very difficult to have the same kind of interaction that's needed. The coffee shop, again, has the same type of doorway. It's, if I'm inside the cafeteria, or inside the coffee shop, I should say, I can leave because I can push the door open, but it's very difficult. The door is very heavy, and even with the strength that I do have, it's almost impossible to open the door. Going into the coffee shop is near impossible. Once you actually access the coffee shop itself, the corridors or the alleyways are so narrow, it's almost impossible to get around. So I have to ask the assistant of the people minding the counter to get the things that I need.
The tunnels that are difficult to access in a wheelchair often suffer structural damage as a result.
Open inward. So I've seen myself actually earlier on in the year. I had a meeting with our deputy minister at 10 o'clock, and it was 10 to 10, and usually I asked somebody to assist me, and because I was in such a hurry, I forgot about it. Went through the one door and then quickly realized that I was stuck in between the two doors. So not so much that I was in mortal danger, but I did yell out for help, and you know, somebody assisted me, sort of thing, which was quite embarrassing, and I had to get them to open the door for me. Otherwise, I would be stuck within those two doors. Now, of course, once you've tackled the two doors, then they have a very sharp incline. I'm not sure what the ratio is, but I know I have a very difficult time maneuvering it downward, and it's impossible coming from the McDonald block back into 80 Bay. I just don't have the muscle control to go up that ramp. So
In the wintertime, I go into the cafe, negotiate the ramp. The problem that arises is once inside, there is no provision made to leaving perhaps 4 or 5 tables with only 2 chairs instead of 6, so that you don't continuously have to struggle with moving the chairs every time you go for lunch. But each table is supposed to have 6 chairs, and that's what they have. So it becomes rather annoying after a while to have to move them all the time.
Dan is presented with further difficulties in the cafeteria. He is unable to use the serving utensils. Reaching the prepared foods and seeing what is available is also hard. As well, he is unable to reach the checkout or exit the food service area.
once I've finished my meal and tried to leave the cafeteria, again, it's impossible. I have to ask somebody to assist me up the ramp. So.
Toileting facilities are also challenging.
The workstation is quite accessible. However, as I come in off the elevator, I cannot access the lobby itself. I have to ask the assistance of passers-by, or if my attendant accompanies me, I will ask him or her to open the door for me. Once I get into the environment itself, I cannot access the message board because I have to ask the secretary or whoever's there to grab my messages. I don't have quite the hand dexterity to grab the messages out. And the way they've got the in and out board situated is that there's a chair here, and then of course the in and out board, and I just don't have the reach or mobility to slide myself in and out. Well, within the actual work setting or work site itself, I think I can flourish quite effectively with using the database, as well as they've provided me with a hands-free unit because a lot of the work that I do is on the phone, and this enables me I guess, access to writing notes down while I'm talking on the phone at the same time. I also have a telephone device for the deaf, which allows me to communicate with hearing impaired individuals quite effectively without actually having to, I guess, go through a bell relay operator, which is quite cumbersome. Now, as far as the paperwork that's involved, of course, as you know, working in government, there's a lot of red tape, and of course, you have to cross the T's and dot the I's to make things efficient. The actual manual dexterity of manipulating paperwork, I have a difficult time with. And I guess for that kind of compensation, they've allowed $18,000 within the budget for clerical support.
Dan's job involves travel between different government buildings, and he finds accessibility obstacles in each location.
We use 15 Overley as a specific example. They have made what I would deem as attempts to make it accessible, but very feeble attempts at that. First of all, they have a very steep ramp, which goes up to an upper level of parking. And at the top of that ramp, of course, there's an overhang, so the raised roof, again, I can't drive the vehicle up there. So if I have an attendant, they have to be fairly strong to push me up that ramp. Or you can go down through the shipping and receiving area, which is quite dirty, and of course, talking about my personal pride, I may have to enter through an alternative means. Once I get to the building itself, again, they have another sharp ramp that makes you accessible to the door itself. And then they have an electronic button which you can access the building.
Crucial to the safe evacuation of all individuals.
Well, what happens?
If fellow workers were to assist me down the flight of stairs if an elevator was no longer in use and somebody was to hurt themselves, and of course there was liability either put on myself or the OPS as a whole. So I'm not sure what the patent answer would be, but there has to be some kind of a liaison with the fire marshal in the area, I would say. In fact, if I closed office, because we are dealing with obviously very confidential information, that office should also have some type of electric door or perhaps a swinging door so that any of my clients or myself could obviously have access to and fro. I think a formal process or a formal policy with the fire marshal as far as health and safety should be established.
The amendment I like to see is that if fire deputy...
Good evening. My name is Dan Thompson. Cripple stems from the word creep. Cripple means one who has lost or has never enjoyed the use of limbs, one who has been deprived of the power of exertion. Handicap originated in the 1800s from the notion that economically deprived individuals who were unable to work, and most having some form of disability, received handouts in their handicaps. Handicap is defined as having a physical or mental disability that substantially limits activity, especially in relationship to employment or education. Lame is defined as being imperfect or deficient. All of these words conjure up illusions of deformed, gnarled, and sometimes hideous individuals who have considerable inabilities. The negative connotations and stereotyping that are associated with disabled individuals is all too common and been entrenched in all of our minds. We all have certain prejudices that we carry inside of us and have been reinforced by people that we associate with in the society in which we live. The perception that all disabled individuals are null and void is too common. These types of associations concentrate on the disability and not necessarily the person who has the impairment. If this is a stage that has been set, it becomes obvious and imperative that change takes place. The most effective tool in reaching and educating people in today's society is television. Television has become affordable to the rich and to the poor. It reaches the Bay Street stockbroker as well as the paperboy in your neighborhood. Television is viewed by white and black, young and old, plus disabled individuals. If a television program was developed, it would become the most effective way to initiate the change that is necessary. If a television program with the right approach was established to discuss issues relating to persons with disabilities, it would evoke the kind of change we are seeking. The changes that are necessary could be viewed by some as being radical. The main reason for these changes could be perceived as being radical is the lack of exposure. If people see only one side of any issue, they believe it to be true. But once people become exposed to information, their ignorance will leave and an audience will be better informed and will emerge. This will be an audience that is ready to see disabled individuals for who they are, just regular people like you and me. This television program will slowly eliminate their attitudes and emotions of pity and unjustified admirations that have been taught and embedded in them. Then after viewing several shows, they will replace their previous notions with expecting disabled individuals to assume responsibilities just like them. This will mean that disabled individuals will get jobs because potential employers would have viewed our program and start believing that it is okay to hire and fire disabled individuals, just like everyone else. After watching our programs, they will be able to make an educated decision on hiring or firing the applicant without being influenced by the person's disability. We will see more disabled individuals traveling because they will be able to afford it now that the employer has seen the program, and of course the disabled individual has purchasing power to afford the trip. Plus, individuals associated with the transportation industry will be better informed about the accessibility and be able to implement changes to accommodate the patrons who have disabilities. You can see the pattern that is developing. I think this domino effect will influence the fashion industry, existing transportation, sports, leisure activities, restaurants, education, employment, the type of technical aids available, but last and most importantly, in conjunction with the previous list, society's perception about disabled individual sexuality. How often, because of historical attitudes and society, has disabled individuals been treated less than the able-bodied counterparts? As a man or a woman, disabled individuals should have the comfort to express themselves for who they are without repercussions. I hope this illustrates a brief outline why a show of this nature is imperative. Thank you, Dan Thompson, Access Connections. Good evening. My name is Dan Thompson. I'm with the Access Connection program. With attitudes, previous attitudes in today's society, words such as crippled, handicapped, lame, any of these negative connotations obviously would have repercussions on disabled individuals. I think with society as a whole, most of the average individuals are very ignorant to the fact of what persons with disabilities can actually do. I think a program such as the Access Connections will enable disabled individuals to be able to participate in today's society with education, jobs, getting back into society, and also being men and women and being treated as equals in society as a whole. Basically, I think with TV, it's far-reaching, and we can access both the rich and the poor, perhaps black and whites, and everything from the stockbroker to the paperboy in your local neighborhood. With this type of exposure and with the right type of program, I think we can eliminate the type of stereotypical attitudes that have been embedded in society as a whole. Thank you. Dan Thompson, Access Connections. Good evening. My name is Dan Thompson. I'm with the Access Connections. Tonight's guest, we have Christine Sampson. Good evening, Christine, and welcome to the show.
Good evening.
Okay. Christine, you were born in London, England in 1953 and spent some time there, of course, and later on you moved into Glasgow. Perhaps you could elaborate on that and let me know a little bit more about your past, if you could, please.
Well, my past was a very good past in Britain, because then I didn't feel any symptoms of what I now know is MS. Back then I was running, dancing a whole bit, and I could see well. Mm-hmm. Now everything is sort of as if atrophied.
So you find that with the multiple sclerosis that you've gathered at a later date, it's obviously affected your sight and your ability to function.
Yes.
Okay. I've mentioned in your dossier here that obviously you've had extensive background both with your family and yourself in broadcasting. Perhaps you could elaborate on that for us, if you could, please.
Well, I'm sort of a TV kid. I grew up with TVs, knowing my father was a director for STV.
And where was that located, STV?
Scottish Television.
Okay.
In Scotland, and CBC. Okay.
And do you enjoy being in the broadcasting field, or?
Well, I like it. It's fascinating.
Okay. I noticed you just completed a course with data. Did you really enjoy that as well?
Yes, I did. Mm-hmm. It's got me onto the part where I desperately want a computer.
Do you feel that with your MS and also with your both your media background as well as your data background, it's helped you cope with your disability?
Oh yes, everything I've done for myself has helped me. Like with post-secondary, post-university training.
If there's one thing you could say to our viewers, and time is running short, maybe perhaps you could let them know how you've coped with your disability in a relatively short period of time.
Just by always having something I'm aiming towards, like this program that I want to freelance for.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Chris.
Hi, my name's Dan Thompson. This is Tom Costello, and we're here to represent the Ontario Wheelchair Rugby Championship, in which we're going to see the Toronto Bulldogs playing the Ottawa Stingers. And basically, the London and District Wheelchair Sports Association is honoring this event. And basically, we're going to see the goal game between those two teams. And maybe, Tom, if you could ask me a few questions about the game, and I could clarify a few of them.
All right, a few things that viewers might want to know in order to understand about what the game's all about. First of all the players are quadriplegic. That means that they're all four limbs are affected. Can you tell us the different classifications of quadriplegic?
Well, basically what you're looking at is three different classes. There's A's, there's B's, and there's C's. A's would be the most affected. Somebody like myself, in which they have no triceps, and they have only limited hand function. B's would be a stronger player, and C's would be stronger than that. Basically, at any given time, you're allowed 8 points on the court. So in other words, you would have either 2 A's and 2 C's, or 4 B's on, or even if you had 2 A's and 2 B's, as long as the point accumulation did not exceed 8 points at any given time.
That's good. And how's the goal scored in this game, Dan?
Okay, basically, this game is similar to basketball in that you have 10 seconds with the ball, then you have to bounce it once. But the way in which you score is different than basketball because you have to cross over a net. You physically have to go over a net in which that you score a goal, eh? And you get 1 point for each goal that is scored.
Does the whole chair have to be over the line?
No, actually, basically, as long as any two wheels are over, either the front 2 wheels, side 2 wheels, or the back 2 wheels, then that constitutes a goal.
All right, now we watched the game last night. There's an awful lot of different rules. So rather than go through them now, we're going to go through them as they happen.
Wheelchair Rugby Championships for 1988, hosted by the Ottawa Stingers. I'm Earl Kane, along with my co-host Dan Thompson, the player coach for the London Blue Turtles. Dan, who are some of the players to watch for in this game that will decide 3rd and 4th place overall between the Ottawa Stingers and the Toronto Bulldogs in red?
Okay, basically, I guess we might as well go with Ottawa first. They are the reigning champs from last year, and they've seen a personnel change here in that Judy Zellman, who's their star player, was in a car accident. She broke her foot and also broke her hand. So I think the key people to look out for, maybe if we could swing the camera around to the lineup there, please, if we could. If we just turn the camera around, please. There, okay, if not...
We'll get a shot of that momentarily.
The main players are Mike Lajoie, number 24. He's classified as a 1B, and you'll see him carrying the ball. They have a new player, number 34, and her name is Stefan, and she's a really good player. Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with her last name. Bill Paul, who's take a 10-second bounce here, which he's done.
He bounces, and he's clear for the goal. It's all tied up at 1.
What's interesting about a team when they press, it's similar to a blitz in football in that if it's effective, you look like a hero. However, if it breaks down like it did there, it makes you look awfully foolish because as Bill comes down and scores the goal, everything breaks down, and consequently, there you go.
Throw in from the end line to from Lacus to Simpson. Tries to pick up the ball. It might be a held ball here.
Might call a jump ball here.
No,
nope.
She gains control. Looking for someone open. Ottawa doing a good job of covering all the men.
Again, Jimmy's just going to keep going back and forth. This time, Dennis, I think, learned his lesson. He's see how he's backed into him? A very effective pick. Because when he backs in like that, he has the maneuverability to come back out. Dale's waiting for his opportunity.
Quite the battle going on between Simpson and Pajot.
Yep.